Olivia Morgan never suspected that the man she built a life with, Daniel, her husband of 12 years, was quietly building a second life behind her back, one that would unravel in front of their entire family with a single devastating video. Olivia Morgan never imagined that her life would one day become the center of a scandal. From the outside, everything looked perfect. She and her husband Daniel lived in an elegant two-story home nestled at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac in Maplewood Hills, a charming suburb just outside Detroit. Their daughter, Ella, was bright and full of energy, the kind of child who could light up any room. Neighbors would often stop to compliment Olivia on her beautiful family, and she would smile, saying all the right things, all while suppressing the faint feeling that something was off. Daniel had always been charismatic, well-liked, successful, the type of man who seemed to effortlessly climb any ladder he approached. As a senior architect at a prestigious firm, he was often invited to client dinners, conferences, and project site visits. Olivia was used to his long hours. At first she admired his ambition, but somewhere along the way she started noticing a change. It began with small things, missed calls that he didn't return, a new cologne he never mentioned, late nights that turned into early mornings. Olivia brushed it off at first. After all, his job was demanding, and she knew the stress could be intense, but the changes didn't stop. He grew more distant. His phone, once left casually on the kitchen counter, was now always in his pocket or face down. His password changed without a word. Olivia tried to convince herself it was paranoia, until she noticed him smiling at texts when he thought no one was watching. One chilly evening in March, Olivia was folding laundry in their bedroom when she noticed Daniel's blazer thrown carelessly over the chair. It wasn't like him to be so sloppy. Curious, she checked the pockets before hanging it up. That's when she found it. A gold bracelet. It was dainty, feminine, clearly not hers. The engraving on the clasp read simply, L. There was no note, no packaging, just the bracelet, tucked away like a forgotten souvenir from a night best left unspoken. Olivia stared at it for a long time, her heart pounding in her chest. Her thoughts spun in all directions. There had to be an explanation. Maybe it was a client's. Maybe someone at the office had left it behind. But why would it be in his pocket? She slipped it into her drawer without a word. That night at dinner, Daniel acted normal. He laughed at Ella's jokes, asked about Olivia's business, and kissed her goodnight like nothing had happened. But Olivia's smile was forced. She couldn't stop thinking about the bracelet, or the way he deflected when she asked how his day had gone, or the fact that he didn't once mention the late meeting he'd supposedly attended. Days passed, and Olivia began observing him more closely. She started keeping a log, dates, times, where he said he was going, who he said he was with. It wasn't just about suspicion anymore. It was about truth, and Olivia was determined to find it. Her instincts screamed louder with each passing day. Something wasn't right. The man she loved, the father of her child, was hiding something. But what? And how deep did it go? What Olivia didn't know was that the bracelet was only the beginning. A single thread in a tangled web of secrets, lies, and betrayal that stretched further than she ever imagined. And once she started pulling, there would be no going back. Because somewhere beneath the facade of family photos and dinner conversations, Daniel Morgan was living a second life. And Olivia had just stepped onto a path that would unravel it all. The bracelet never left Olivia's mind. She tried to ignore it, tried to convince herself it meant nothing. But it sat in her drawer like a ticking time bomb, whispering questions she couldn't answer. Who was Elle? Why would Daniel have her bracelet? And why had he never mentioned it? Every time she passed the dresser, her eyes drifted toward the drawer. Each glance stirred the same unease, the same sense of something unraveling. Olivia told herself she wasn't the kind of woman who snooped, who spied. She valued trust, but trust only worked when both people played by the same rules. And lately, Daniel seemed to be playing a very different game. The next day, while cleaning the kitchen, Olivia noticed Daniel's phone buzzing on the counter. It was an unfamiliar number. Just 10 digits, no name. Before she could read the preview, the screen went dark. She didn't pick it up. She didn't have to. Her stomach had already started to twist. That evening, Daniel came home late again. He said there was a presentation that ran over schedule. He smelled like the new cologne again. The same one she never asked for and he never explained. He seemed tired, distracted, his eyes darting over her like he was checking to see if she suspected anything. She asked about his day casually, pretending to fold laundry on the sofa. He recited the usual: meetings, traffic, a client dinner that took too long. But he couldn't recall the name of the restaurant when she pressed him for details. He hesitated, then said it was somewhere downtown, a place he couldn't remember. Olivia smiled and nodded, but something in her shifted. The pieces weren't adding up. That night she went into the office Daniel used for remote work and sat at his desk. She opened the drawers, not to invade his privacy, but because she had already crossed that invisible line between doubt and investigation. The top drawer held nothing unusual. Pens, notepads, charging cables, but in the bottom drawer, tucked between blueprints and old files, she found a folded paper with a printed calendar. It was a project schedule for a commercial client. Nothing suspicious on its own, but the highlighted dates matched nights Daniel had claimed to be working late. That's what caught her eye. She compared them to her notes. The problem was that the client listed on the calendar had completed construction 6 months ago. Why was he still using those dates as excuses? Then there was the credit card statement. She didn't mean to open it, but it had arrived in the mail, and Daniel left it on the counter. Olivia skimmed the list of transactions: gas stations, coffee shops, groceries, but one charge stood out. A boutique hotel in the city. It wasn't a chain. It was small, discreet, expensive. She checked the date. It was the same night he told her he was stuck late reviewing building code revisions. Now the questions multiplied. Was Daniel seeing someone? Was it someone at work? And why was he being so careless? Unless he thought she'd never look. The bracelet, the phone buzz, the hotel charge. They weren't isolated incidents anymore. They were puzzle pieces falling into place. Olivia didn't want to believe it, but the truth was becoming harder to ignore. If she wanted answers, she would need to look further, closer, deeper, smarter. She couldn't confront him yet. Not without proof. Not without something undeniable. That night, as Daniel slept soundly beside her, Olivia lay wide awake, staring at the ceiling, already building a plan in her mind. She needed someone who could help her without raising alarms. Someone who knew how to dig without being seen. She reached for her phone and pulled up her contacts. The last time she had called Harper Lee was months ago. But tomorrow, she would dial the number. Because this wasn't just about a bracelet anymore. It was about the lie Olivia had unknowingly been living in, and the quiet, creeping sense that it was only the beginning. Harper Lee hadn't changed much since Olivia had last seen her. Sharp-eyed, direct and endlessly curious. Though not yet a licensed investigator, Harper had always possessed a mind built for patterns. A gift for spotting what others missed. She was the friend who remembered odd details, the kind who could listen to a story and instantly identify what didn't belong. When Olivia called, Harper didn't hesitate. She cleared her schedule and drove out the next day. They met in Olivia's kitchen, blinds drawn, coffee mugs in hand, while Ella played outside unaware of the storm brewing just beyond her world. Olivia laid everything out: the bracelet, the hotel receipt, the mismatched calendar dates. She had taken photos of everything, each image a small step deeper into the mystery. Harper listened without interrupting, nodding, her expression calm but focused. When Olivia finished, Harper simply said, "Let's find out who Elle is." Harper started by looking into Daniel's office. It didn't take long to uncover that the firm regularly featured team members in social media posts. Project photos, celebratory dinners, milestone announcements. Harper scrolled through dozens of images, noting names and tags, comparing dates to Olivia's timeline. One person kept showing up: Leah Dawson. Leah was young, striking, with a bold, confident smile. She had joined the firm just under 2 years ago and, by all appearances, had quickly become a favorite on Daniel's team. She was in photos from team lunches, client meetings, even one from a firm-sponsored retreat. An event Daniel had told Olivia was mandatory and very boring. In the photo, Leah and Daniel stood side by side, a little too close, his arm barely grazing hers, the kind of closeness you don't see unless you're looking for it. Then came the tagged locations. Harper tracked Leah's social media accounts. Public, curated, and polished. Nothing suspicious at first, until they compared her posts to Daniel's claimed whereabouts. Several dates aligned perfectly. Leah had posted a selfie from a wine bar downtown the same night Daniel said he was attending a supplier dinner. Another showed her on a rooftop lounge near the boutique hotel Olivia had spotted on the credit card bill. The caption read, "Unexpected nights are the best ones." The pieces clicked. Leah was L. And she wasn't just a passing flirtation, she was a pattern. Still, Olivia needed more than social media breadcrumbs. She needed evidence. Real evidence. Harper suggested they take a different approach. Since confronting Daniel could ruin any chance of catching him in the act, they had to create a situation where the truth would come to them. A trap, but one that appeared innocent on the surface. They began drafting a plan, something organic and difficult to avoid. Olivia mentioned the upcoming family reunion, an annual gathering held at her late grandmother's lakeside estate. It was tradition, something Daniel wouldn't miss without drawing suspicion. Harper leaned in, her mind already spinning. A gathering full of people. Food, drinks, music. Distraction. The perfect cover. What if Leah received an invitation too? It wouldn't come from Olivia, of course. Harper, using an anonymous office email account and some clever wording, could create a message that looked like an internal company. Invite, team bonding, casual networking, even an award announcement. Something vague but tempting enough to pique Leah's interest. Olivia hesitated. It felt deceptive. But then she remembered the bracelet in the drawer, the empty excuses, and the child asleep upstairs who deserved better than a home full of secrets. Harper saw the look in Olivia's eyes and said nothing more. The decision was already made. They had identified the other woman. Now it was time to bring her into the light. The idea of using the family reunion as a trap was bold, risky, even. But Olivia knew it was her best chance. The lakeside estate where the reunion was held each year had been in her family for generations. The property was large and secluded, surrounded by woods on one side and a private shoreline on the other. It was the kind of place that made people let their guard down. Cell reception was spotty. The nearest town was 20 minutes away, and once guests arrived, they usually stayed for hours if not the whole weekend. It was the perfect setting to catch someone off guard. Olivia threw herself into planning the event like she always did, sending out formal invitations, organizing food deliveries, arranging lawn games and bonfires. No one would suspect anything unusual. Daniel had never missed a reunion, and she was counting on that pattern holding. She played the part of the doting wife flawlessly, making small talk about cousins and vacation plans, asking Daniel if he wanted her to coordinate with his office in case any of his coworkers wanted to tag along for a break from the city. Daniel smiled, told her he'd see if anyone was interested, and left it at that. He had no idea he was being watched. Meanwhile, Harper got to work crafting a fake invitation. She used a near-perfect replica of the firm's internal communications format. Clean, professional, with the firm's logo and the standard email footer. The message was simple: a casual team-building opportunity hosted by one of the partners, open to close collaborators and their plus ones. The subject line read, "Private Retreat Invite, Morgan Family Lake Event." It was designed to sound exclusive, like an inside opportunity, just enough to be intriguing. Harper sent it from a dummy account that mimicked the firm's executive assistant's name. All that was left to do was wait. 3 days before the reunion, Olivia noticed Daniel acting slightly different. Not nervous, but preoccupied. He spent more time on his phone than usual, and when she walked into a room, he would quickly switch screens or lower his voice. That night, he mentioned that a colleague might stop by the reunion briefly, just to say hello. Olivia nodded, pretending to be surprised. She asked who it was. Daniel shrugged and said it was someone new on his team, probably wouldn't even stay long. She smiled and poured more wine. The day of the reunion arrived warm and clear. Olivia wore a soft blue sundress, her hair pulled back in a loose braid. She looked calm, collected. Inside, her heart raced. Harper arrived early under the guise of helping set up, but she had other tasks in mind. With Olivia's permission, she discreetly placed 3 small, motion-activated cameras around the house. One in the hallway upstairs, one facing the guest room doorway, and another in the den that led to the back porch. All of them were hidden in plain sight, tucked into bookshelves, concealed inside decorative vases or mounted behind picture frames. Everything was in place. Guests began arriving, cousins, aunts, uncles, a few old family friends. Laughter filled the air. Children ran barefoot across the grass. The scent of grilled food mingled with fresh lake breeze. It felt like any other year. Then in the late afternoon, a sleek silver car pulled into the gravel driveway. Leah Dawson stepped out wearing oversized sunglasses and a floral dress that didn't quite match the casual tone of the event. She smiled politely, holding a small gift bag as if unsure of what she was walking into. Daniel met her at the edge of the lawn, his face an unreadable mix of surprise and effortful calm. He greeted her with a handshake and a quick glance over his shoulder toward the house, toward Olivia. But Olivia was already watching from the upstairs window. She didn't blink, she didn't move. She had waited weeks for this moment, and the trap had just begun to close. By the time the sun began its slow descent behind the trees, casting golden light across the lake, the reunion was in full swing. Laughter echoed from the dock. Children splashed in the shallows while adults sipped drinks and reminisced on folding chairs and porch swings. It was the kind of scene that made it easy to forget anything was wrong. But Olivia hadn't forgotten. She moved through the event with the grace of a perfect hostess, offering drinks, checking on food, smiling at distant relatives she barely knew. All the while her eyes drifted subtly, steadily, to one guest in particular, Leah Dawson. Leah blended in well, or at least she tried to. She mingled with small groups, made polite conversation, and complimented the house more than once. But something about her energy was off. She wasn't entirely comfortable. Olivia could see it in the way Leah kept checking her phone, as if waiting for a signal that never came. Daniel stayed close to her, but never too close. They barely made eye contact in public, careful to keep their interactions casual. To anyone else, Leah looked like an office acquaintance tagging along, nothing more. But to Olivia, it was clear. This wasn't some awkward intern trying to impress the boss. There was a history between them, and no matter how carefully they avoided touching, their body language gave them away. The subtle way they positioned themselves when they talked, the momentary smirk they shared when they thought no one was looking. What they didn't know was that every move, every glance, every accidental alignment was being recorded. Harper had positioned the cameras perfectly, one in the upstairs hallway, angled toward the guest room, another downstairs, behind the bookshelf that faced the den, where Daniel and Leah occasionally passed one another, exchanging whispers, and a third, hidden in a vase by the staircase, catching the flow of traffic between rooms. By evening, most of the guests had gone. A few close family members stayed behind, chatting around the fire pit. Leah said she might leave soon, but didn't. Daniel became harder to find. He claimed he was handling leftover food, storing drinks, helping Olivia clean up, but he never actually offered to help her directly. Around 10:30, Leah disappeared from the group entirely. Olivia noticed it first, then quietly signaled Harper. Harper didn't speak. She simply picked up her phone and walked into the house, heading straight for the small screen rigged in the pantry, where the security feed ran in silence. Olivia followed moments later, her pulse quickening. The upstairs hallway camera showed it all. At 10:42 p.m., Daniel walked up the stairs alone. glancing back toward the yard before vanishing from frame. Less than a minute later, Leah followed. She moved quickly, head down, and stepped into the guest room. The door didn't close all the way, but it didn't need to. Harper pressed pause, zoomed slightly, then hit record again. Olivia watched silently, her face unreadable. 21 minutes passed before Leah emerged, smoothing her hair and clutching her phone. She headed downstairs alone. Daniel followed 2 minutes later, adjusting his shirt collar and checking his watch like he was late for something. Neither of them said a word to anyone. Back in the pantry, Harper saved the footage and backed it up to a separate device. Olivia didn't need to say anything. Her silence was heavy, focused. Not sadness, not rage, just pure calculation. She had what she needed. The lie was no longer hidden. It had walked willingly into her house, under the guise of civility, exposed itself when it thought no one was watching. But someone was. And tomorrow, everyone else would see it too. Morning came softly, with mist curling off the lake, and the hush of early light filtering through the trees. The quiet was almost serene, but for Olivia, the peace was a lie. She hadn't slept. After Harper had backed up the footage, they sat in the dim light of the pantry, planning the next move. Now, as the world around her yawned into a new day, Olivia prepared for something far more deliberate than revenge. It was revelation. Daniel acted as though nothing had happened. He moved about the kitchen casually, brewing coffee, offering to make eggs, making small talk about how nice it was to see everyone. Olivia played along, nodding, smiling in all the right places. But every word from him landed like static in her ears. There was no trust left to salvage, no marriage left to protect. What she had now was evidence, and a stage. By mid-morning, a dozen relatives had returned for a farewell brunch. The smell of syrup and sizzling bacon drifted through the air. Folding tables were arranged beneath the wide oak tree in the backyard, and Ella ran barefoot in the grass, oblivious to the war quietly building behind her parents' eyes. Harper kept to the background, holding a tablet in her hands, the damning footage queued up and ready. Just after noon, Olivia made the announcement. She tapped a spoon gently against a glass, smiling warmly. "Before everyone leaves, I thought it would be nice to play a little video. Something I put together as a thank you. Some memories. A tribute to our time together." Applause followed. Guests gathered inside, where a projector had been set up in the living room. Pillows were scattered on the floor. People found seats on couches, chairs, the wooden floorboards. Daniel stood behind the group, his arms folded, casual, confident. He looked proud. To him this was Olivia doing what she did best, organizing, entertaining, making people feel special. He had no idea what was coming. The video began simply. Soft music played over family photos, birthdays, holidays, vacations by the lake. Olivia narrated parts of it in voiceover, offering kind words, heartfelt memories. Laughter rippled through the room. Someone teared up. It was warm, safe, familiar. Then the screen flickered. The music stopped. The footage cut abruptly to the hallway camera upstairs. The timestamp unmistakably marked 10:42 p.m., the night before. There was Daniel, moving up the stairs, glancing behind him. There was Leah, following him minutes later. The room fell dead silent. The image jumped to the doorway of the guest room, where both Daniel and Leah slipped inside. The camera held on the door, slightly ajar, long enough to make the message clear. Then it showed Leah exiting, fixing her hair, and Daniel following moments later. Someone gasped. Aunt Marlene clutched her chest. Ella, seated on the floor, looked up in confusion, and whispered her father's name. Daniel surged forward, reaching for the projector, muttering Olivia's name like a warning, but Harper was already ending between him and the equipment. "No," Olivia said quietly from the side of the room. "Let them see." Daniel stopped, as if the ground had shifted beneath him. Leah was gone, slipped out during the first half of the video. No one had noticed until now. A cold silence spread through the room. Everyone was staring at Daniel, No one said a word. In one moment, the perfect image he had worked so hard to maintain shattered into something unrecognizable. There was no denial, no justification, only the raw truth, exposed like a nerve. Olivia turned and walked out of the room without another word, leaving the lies behind her like ash in the air. But she wasn't finished. There was still more to uncover, and deeper betrayals still hiding beneath the surface. The hours that followed the reveal felt unreal, surreal, like the moments after a tornado passes, and everything is still standing, but nothing feels the same. Daniel didn't speak, not to Olivia, not to Ella, not to anyone. He disappeared into the guest room for a while, the same one where he had shattered everything he claimed to care about. Olivia could hear the muffled hum of his voice through the wall, probably making frantic phone calls to Leah, or trying to control the damage. But there was nothing left to say. By early evening, most of the guests had gone, some left in silence, others in disbelief. A few gave Olivia lingering hugs, unsure of what to say, but needing to say something. The quiet of the lake returned, but this time it wasn't peaceful, it was hollow. Daniel eventually emerged, packed a single duffel bag, and stood in the doorway of the kitchen like he wanted to explain. Olivia didn't even look at him. He paused for a moment, as if waiting for her to stop him, but she didn't move, and then he was gone. The house felt heavier after he left, as if the truth had settled into the floorboards, pressing down on everything. Olivia didn't cry, she couldn't. Not yet. Instead, she sat at the kitchen table with Harper, scrolling through files, statements, and screenshots like a detective who hadn't yet finished her case. Because she hadn't. Harper had noticed something odd earlier that day. While backing up the security footage, she had gone through a backup of Daniel's laptop, a copy Olivia had made weeks ago, just in case. Most of the files were ordinary: architectural plans, firm documents, email drafts, but one folder stood out. It was buried beneath layers of professional paperwork, hidden behind fine lines that looked like client codes. Inside were spreadsheets, financial logs, transfers, banking activity. Harper recognized immediately what they were: records of someone moving money around. Not massive amounts at once, but steady, frequent, precise. Daniel had been transferring money from their joint accounts into another account. And it wasn't under his name. It was under Leah Dawson's. The numbers added up to nearly $40,000 over the course of 2 years, hidden in plain sight, filtered through fake business expenses, charity donations, even vacation reimbursements. And Olivia had never noticed, because Daniel had kept her distracted with just enough surface-level transparency to avoid suspicion. But now she saw it all. It hadn't been just an affair, it had been a slow, quiet betrayal. A siphoning of trust, money, and stability, funneled into someone else's future. A future he had clearly intended to build without her. Harper leaned back from the screen, jaw tight, voice low. He wasn't just cheating, Liv, he was setting you up to be left behind, completely. The room spun for a moment, not from shock, but from confirmation. The betrayal wasn't only emotional, it was financial, calculated, criminal. He had been methodical, cold, preparing to vanish with both a lover and a fortune, while Olivia kept the household running and raised their daughter. The realization hardened something inside her. She wasn't just a wife scorned, she was a woman who had been deceived on every level, and now she had the evidence to prove it. The next day, Olivia filed a report with the local authorities. She brought everything: the bank statements, the transaction history, the folder from Daniel's computer. Leah's name was all over the documents. The case moved quickly, too quickly for Daniel to run. Within a week, he was arrested at his office on charges of financial fraud and misappropriation of marital assets. Leah turned state's witness, cutting a deal to avoid prosecution in exchange for everything she knew. But Olivia didn't care about their deals or their excuses. She wasn't waiting for justice anymore. She had already taken it back, piece by piece. The news of Daniel's arrest spread quickly through their community, first in whispers and hushed speculation, then in bold headlines splashed across local outlets. Architect charged in marital fraud scheme. Alleged mistress cooperates with authorities. Olivia didn't read the full articles. She didn't need to. She had lived the story long before the world discovered it. The morning he was taken from his office in handcuffs, Olivia sat alone on the front porch of her home, sipping tea in the same chair she once shared with him during quiet weekends. Now that silence meant something else: freedom, closure, and something deeper that hadn't yet settled: the weight of everything she now knew. Ella asked about her father only once in the days after the arrest. Olivia chose honesty, carefully framed for a 10-year-old mind. Daddy made some very big mistakes, and now he has to fix them. It was enough for now. The child's innocence had already been cracked. Olivia would not let it be shattered. Though Daniel's downfall had unfolded with shocking speed, Olivia knew the deception had been years in the making. The signs had always been there, faint but present. Odd charges on bank statements, forgotten stories that changed slightly when retold, that persistent undercurrent of distance in his eyes. But what awed her most wasn't the lies, it was how easily he had lived them. Leah, facing pressure from investigators and desperate to avoid prison, handed over everything: emails, messages, voice recordings, proof that Daniel had planned a quiet exit strategy. He had spoken to her about moving to another state, buying property under a corporate shell, and draining his assets before filing for divorce. In some of the messages he mocked Olivia's trust, describing her as comfortably clueless. Leah's cooperation may have saved her legally, but her words revealed the full depth of the betrayal. Olivia listened to the recordings once, just once. That was enough. The court proceedings began quietly, with Daniel pleading not guilty. But the mountain of evidence made his defense nearly impossible. The prosecutors were swift and unyielding. Daniel's reputation, once pristine, crumbled in real time. Clients pulled away. His firm placed him on indefinite leave. Friends distanced themselves. His family offered awkward support, laced with shame. But none of that mattered to Olivia anymore. She had long since stopped looking outward for validation. Her strength was no longer rooted in appearances or opinions, it was in what she had done, what she had survived. Weeks after the storm passed, Olivia returned to the lake house alone. The last of the guests were long gone. The lawn was quiet, and the air smelled like pine and memory. She stood in the very room where she had exposed the truth, where the footage had played and the illusion had finally cracked. It felt different now, lighter, like the house itself had exhaled. She walked to the drawer where she had once hidden the gold bracelet, the one that started it all. She held it in her palm, turning it over slowly. It no longer felt like a symbol of betrayal. It was evidence, yes, but also a key that had unlocked everything. Olivia placed the bracelet in a small box and stored it in a safe, not out of bitterness, but as a reminder that instinct is not paranoia. That silence can be a warning, that the truth always leaves a trail, no matter how careful someone thinks they are, and that when the time comes, even the most carefully constructed lies will collapse under their own weight. She stepped outside into the evening light, the water calm, the sky fading into soft gold. She had been the victim, the investigator, the executioner of truth, and now, finally, the survivor.